Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie Vaughn with Family Fiction's Christian Fiction Bookshelf podcast. And today's episode of the Christian Fiction Bookshelf podcast is brought to you by Bethany House. And our guest today is Jen Turano, and she is here to talk to us about her latest book called This to Spark a Match. Hi, Jen. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So tell me what you can about the book without giving too much away.
Well, I just so happen I have a copy here.
Okay.
So this is Miss Adelaide Devine, and she showed up in the first book, A Match in the Making. But as an aside, I write my books as standalones, so you don't necessarily have had to have read this one to understand what's going on here.
Gotcha. Okay.
And Adelaide, she is a misfit, and she just doesn't fit into high society. So it's set within the New York 400, and she's constantly just finding herself in odd situations. And some of those situations have been set up by what we would call mean girls. But she's very, very kind. And she finds herself, it opens up. She's walking across the drawing room and with an intimate dinner party of 200, because that was considered intimate with 200 back then. And she has gotten the hem of her skirt tucked into the back of her bustle, exposing her drawers to all of these members of the New York 400. And so she decides she's going to make her escape. She's an avid reader. So she always has a book handy, and she also loves cats. And unfortunately, the drawers she has on are embroidered with cats. So she's given everyone quite the eyeful. So she makes her escape, and she goes into the library, and she just happens upon Mr. Gideon Abbott. And he is a man with a mysterious past. He's like an intelligence agent, right? Mm-hmm. And he is in the midst of a situation that has just gone south really rapidly, and he's in a bit of a pickle. So Adelaide helps him out. And because of that, she finds herself drawn into his world of intrigue, and she's put into danger. So Gideon, feeling horrible that he's brought her into his world, but he's also very grateful because she did help him out of this pickle. He decides to prevail upon Miss Camilla Pierpont, who is a matchmaker. And she has her own story that'll be coming up later. And she's very proper. She's one of the most proper ladies in the New York 400. And he convinces her not to set her up with a match, but to turn her into a diamond of the first water. And so, because they are very good friends, Camilla agrees to this because she thinks it'll be a challenge. And it just goes from there. And of course, because it's Adelaide, there's a lot of just really interesting situations that happen. One of my favorite parts was when I was doing research, she needed to have weapons because now she's in Gideon's world, right? And there's weapons involved. And there I found this. It is a grappling hook that shoots out of a pistol. Real life. It actually was back in those days. And so that plays a part in this book.
Okay. So I know what the New York 400 is, but for our viewers, explain what that is.
Okay. So New York high society came about. So after the Gilded Age really started after the Civil War. And that's where I write. I write in the Gilded Age. And what happened was New York City had the old money. They were called Knickerbockers. Mm-hmm. And the Knickerbockers did not like the nouveau riche that were coming into town. The Vanderbilts, for one. They thought that they were uncouth. Right. So Carolyn Astor decided that something had to be done, along with Ward McAllister, who was the social arbiter of the day. And they formed like an elite society. And Ward McAllister is the one who called it the 400. But interestingly enough, one of the reasons, it's like historians disagree about how that really happened, but Carolyn Astor had a brownstone on Fifth Avenue. And it wasn't one of the fancy big houses yet back in the beginning of the 1800s. It was a brownstone. I mean, it was big, but it could only comfortably fit 400 people in the ballroom. Only 400. So that's where Ward came up with that. And then toward the late 1880s, he finally handed over a list of who compiled up of the 400. And there weren't 400 names on there, and some of them were repeated. And it was kind of, so it was just a snobbish thing, but
Yeah.
everybody wanted to get into there. So Carolyn Astor was the one you had to get through to be included into the 400. And Alva Vanderbilt did in 1883. She forced Carolyn Astor's hand because they were excluded. Carolyn Astor never paid a call on her. And when they did calling back then, it wasn't that the women actually even got out of their carriage. They would just pull their carriage up and their groomsmen would take their calling card in, and that was paying a call on someone because they were just really busy. That's how they spent their mornings, late afternoon. Well, Carolyn had never paid a call on Alva Vanderbilt. So Alva decides to host this ball in 1883. And she held it in March, which is really past when the season normally was. And Carolyn's daughter, Carolyn, really wanted to go. And she was supposed to perform in the Star Quadrille. And she'd been practicing like crazy. And then Alva played her card because she said, well, I'm so sorry. I can't invite the Astors to the ball because Carolyn, your mother, has never paid a call on me. So Carolyn Astor supposedly got in her carriage, drove over to the Vanderbilt house, had her card done, and then Alva Vanderbilt. And that's when you start seeing the Gilded Age turn a little crazy. It just got more and more extravagant. Conspicuous consumption. It's a fascinating period. So that's what the 400 is. It's a really high, snobby society.
Yeah. I actually just watched a documentary on it on the History Channel. So it was, so it was fun to watch all of that. And then I'm reading about this book. I was like, oh, okay. So it all kind of fits in there together. So why did you pick the Gilded Age and how does it influence your writing?
So when I first started writing historical romances, that wasn't really my first genre. It took me 5 years to find an agent, 5 years and 7 manuscripts before I found an agent. And I read a lot of historical romance. So I finally I experimented with different genres and I finally went back to historical romance, and that was my sweet spot. But I knew that immediately because I would send out query letters and I was getting all these requests to see the full manuscripts. So I had read, the first historical I did was actually Regency. But I found this book, Consuela and Alva Vanderbilt. So I read this book and I'm like, this is fascinating. And there wasn't much written about the Gilded Age when I started. So I said, So then I got another book. It's called A Season of Splendor, The Court of Mrs. Astor. So I read that one and I'm like, I have to write a book like this. And so that's why I decided to set A Change of Fortune in the Gilded Age in New York City. And I've been there ever since. It's a great time period. I mean, in the stories, there's so much story for fodder because it was crazy. It was just crazy.
Yep. So tell me about these matchmaking people that were in the Gilded Age. Is this a real thing, or is this just something
They did have. I have taken some creative license. I'm just going to admit that I have, but they did have matchmakers. There's this one, Mamie Paget, I believe her name is. So she was from a somewhat wealthy family. She probably only had $1 million in those days, because a lot of these people, like the Vanderbilts, when the Commodore Vanderbilt died, he was worth $100 million. And so that would be billions today, right? So she wasn't considered the cream of the crop in the United States. So she went over to England. And over in England, all of the aristocracy, they loved her. So then you start getting into where people like the Vanderbilts, Alva Vanderbilt insisted her daughter Consuela marry a duke. Didn't work out well. But this Mrs. Paget, she would perform the introductions. She was the matchmaker, and she's actually written about that. She did this. And then there were other ones, just, you know what I mean, like the local, women's club, and they would get together. But I did take some license on it because you can't find like specifics on how they were compensated. I found a few references that, yes, like they wouldn't accept money because that was considered, you'd be in trade. And of course, if you're a member of the 400, you cannot be in trade. So, they would deliver, a beautiful diamond bracelet if a match was made, things like that. But yeah, there were matchmakers back then, but it was very discreet, and the gentlemen were not allowed to know that there were matchmakers there.
Okay, nice. So how
Yes.
did you pick Gideon's job as being an intelligent agent?
I was just, I have a box that, so I do a lot of research. Like right now, I'm researching stuff on Chicago. So I have a pile of books over here, and they're all just, I pulled out one just to show you, because if anybody's interested in the 400, this is called the First 400.
Okay.
Super cool. And so it actually lists all of those people Ward McAllister said, and it gives
Mhm.
you some descriptions about them. So I do a ton of research, and when I run across things, I ran across that the first official like intelligence agency was connected to the Navy, and it wasn't, and it was very secret, and so I saw that, I'm like, that would be cool to have one of my heroes work with this first intelligence agency. I mean, they had intelligence gathering, like even in the Revolutionary War, things like this, but it wasn't formal. So this was a
Right.
formal thing connected to the Navy. So that's how I got up with Gideon's idea to do that with him.
Okay. So what was the most interesting thing you found in your research?
Oh, let's see. Well, there was a lot. Again, that grappling hook was great. Um, what else did I learn? Well, let's see. So I'm on 2 books ahead of this, so I have to refresh my memory on what the story is actually about. But it was like the weapons, and then that was very interesting. And then I think there's some old books listed in here because Adelaide opens up a bookstore, where she's kind of given a bookstore at one point in the story, because again, she's an avid reader.
Right.
So I did do like a bunch of old books, because I was looking they have a room upstairs where they would have like the really expensive volumes.
Mhm.
And so that was interesting, but I can't come up with one title of a book right now.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm that way when people ask me, like, what's their name? I'm like, I knew it until you asked me. So, yeah.
Right? Yeah, I'm like,
I completely
drawing a blank
understand.
here.
Yeah. So, what do you feel, or let me rephrase that question. How did you fall into writing romantic comedies, and why is that something that you enjoy so much doing?
It just seems to be, it's just natural for me.
Okay.
I have a really weird sense of humor. I just look at life a little bit differently.
Mhm.
Weird things happen to me all the time. So a lot of how the book opens up with her getting the hem of her skirt stuck in her
Mhm.
bustle. That was from real life experience for me. That happened to me. I majored in fashion, so I used to work in department stores until I
Mhm.
had my son, and I was out on the floor. I was helping customers, and I was helping men, and they would not look me in the eye. It was the weirdest thing ever, and I had no idea what was going on. One of my really good customers came in. Her name was Donna. Donna, I've got a great tip for you. We just got this new line of DKNY, and do you want to, do you want me to schedule you for a private showing? And she goes, oh, yeah, that'd be great. She goes, Jen, but come here. She goes, I have a tip for you. She's like, the hem of your skirt is tucked into the back of your pantyhose. And I was like, oh, and I had Mickey Mouse underwear on. So it was so embarrassing. And I have been trying for years to fit that into one of my stories, because it's hilarious. Like, it would
Yeah.
only happen to me, And
Yeah.
of course, I must have waited on like 7 men, and they just, and I, when I tell you, they fled. They
Mhm.
fled from my presence after they finished whatever they were looking for. I mean,
Yeah.
they ran out of the department. I was like, I have to put that in a book. So it's just things like that happen all the time. When I was a lifeguard, I was sitting, twirling my whistle. Gust of wind came up, the umbrella folded on me, so all you could see were my legs. And then so I'm trying to get out, and another gust came, and it took me into the pool. I mean, nobody has stuff like that happen to them. I almost drowned. It's really difficult to get out an umbrella when you're in like the
Right.
12-foot section and you're sinking, right? But so it's just stuff like that. It's just natural for me to put that in there. And yeah, so I like to do, so I'm a conversational author.
Mhm.
It's a lot of conversation. But with comedy, it has to be, because it has
Yeah.
to flow really fast, or it drags down the story.
Mhm.
So but yeah, like it doesn't, like, I don't get funny. I do 7 edits before I turn a book in to
Mhm.
my editors for the first time, and then they're going to make suggestions, and I'm going to rewrite it again anyways. But
Right.
I go through it. So about about edit number 5, that's when I start getting funny, because then I'll start trimming things and I make it faster. So, yeah.
Well, everyone, this is the first time we've talked about underwear on Family Fiction. So
Minnie Mouse at that. Yes.
why not? So when the reader gets through this book and it gets to the words "the end," and they close that back cover, what do you want them to take away from it?
You know, the point of this book was really that it's okay to be different. So Camilla will take Adelaide in hand, so to speak. But really, the realization is that she's fine just the way she is. You know, she doesn't need to be changed. And then, you know, I do a lot of work with teens. I work with a lot of teen writers. And they're always so self-conscious that, are they made fun of because they like to read books, or that they like to, they like to write or whatever. And you know what? Like, I've always been weird. So, and I'm fine with that. And when I was in high school, or younger, like elementary school, middle school, I didn't want to be different. But then you just come to the realization that, you know what, it's okay. And the older I got, it was like, you know what, it's perfectly fine. I'm just a weird girl. And so that's really what I wanted to impart, because I work with so many teens, and it's like, it's okay. It's okay. You like to read, or you know what I mean? Or one of them likes to knit, and it's okay. You can knit, or you don't have to wear what everyone else is wearing. I mean, I've always like gone off the deep end with fashion, so, and all of that's okay. So that's really what I wanted to impart for some of my readers, just that, just embrace who you are, and you don't need to change. If people can't accept you for who you are, then those aren't your people.
Right.
You have to find your people.
Yeah. And God made us all different anyway, so we don't copy each other. Yeah, I can
exactly.
So what's next for you?
So right now, I finished the 3rd book in the series. It's called Meeting Her Match, and it is Camilla, the matchmaker's story. She has quite the mystery surrounding her. She's vowed to never marry. Why? I'm not telling you. So I'll be releasing the cover for that. It's one of my favorite covers of all times. It's absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to be releasing that to the public next week. And then the only thing I have left to do on that book, I have to do, I've already turned in the development on it. So I just have copy and line edits to do, and then the design pages. So those are super easy. That's not a big deal. And then, so now I just signed a 4-book contract, just about like maybe a month and a half ago. So I'm just starting. It's the Merriweather Academy for young ladies. And 3 of those books will be in the academy. And then the 4th book is going to be a Christmas book that I've been dying to do for a while. So I just started getting into that. I've been on vacation. I went back to my hometown of Ohio because I had a high school reunion I had to attend. And during that time, I was doing like, I thought I knew the names. No, not a single name cooperated. I got back. I started writing. Nobody wanted to be who I thought they were going to be. So I think I'm in business. At least I think I have the hero. Well, I'm not even going to tell you that because he's still a little iffy. But the heroine's name is going to be Annalise. At least this week, she's Annalise. Next week, she might change her mind, and I don't know what she'll be. But yeah, so that's what I'm working on. It should be fun.
Oh, well, congrats on the new contract. That's always exciting. I love hearing when the authors, have done such a good job that those publishing houses want to extend those contracts and keep them there.
And yes, and it's been an interesting journey. I think I signed my first contract in 2011.
Wow.
Turned into one of the old people, right?
Well, Jen, thank you so much for spending time with us today on the Christian Fiction Bookshelf podcast. And everyone, make sure you go out now and get the Spark a Match, available at your local Christian bookstores or wherever you buy books. And have a great day.